Welcome back to LFPB Ministries. And today we're talking about the fact that God gave me a word about dating. I was trying to figure out how I was going to do this because he showed me David is the Cinderella of the story, which could also be cross-referenced with Jacob. Okay? Your spouse is just like the person in Cinderella, but they started out as David. David, just like Cinderella, did what? David was the one that they put out to the field. David was the one out there with the slingshot. David was out there put to pasture. What was Cinderella? Cinderella was the one that had to clean up after everybody, to do everything for her stepsisters, to be all of this. And they put her out. She'd be out in the backyard, in the one with the brandy. She was out putting the feed for the horses when the prince found her. David was out with the lions and the bears. That's what your spouse was doing. Your spouse was that person. He may have had a good jovial presentation, but he's the person that loved to listen to music and do all of this and be by himself and out in nature and just be by himself. And he enjoyed being out there, but he was out there killing lions and bears. Don't get it twisted. Some of your spouses look like they're very kind, sweet, jovial people, but some of the careers that they in, it's like they couldn't possibly have been that nice and ended up where they are. They'd have been eaten alive, as nice as their mouth is. Something else ain't adding up here. Why? Because they was killing lions and bears behind closed doors. Just because you didn't see them killing lions and bears in front of your face. But I have seen my spouse say something publicly that let me know just from his tone. I was like, oh, this brother is not one that you can walk over easily. Not at all. Cross me will tell you where you can put it. Saw this man completely lift up another human being one time. I was like, and they was just joking around. So, but he had like that. So I'm just like, okay. And when I say another human being, I mean another man. So, yeah. Easily. So, this man gonna be a protector to you 110%. But my point is, he got that strength being out in the wilderness fighting them lions and bears. If you had to go out in the wilderness and God had you spiritually fighting all these lions and bears, you think that he didn't have to go fight all them lions and bears? You ever notice that a lot of people that go into these industries have gone through a season of homelessness first before they went? Because it was a training ground. They had to go into and see spirits, gain wisdom, understand knowledgeably what was going on in order to be able to come back and be like, okay, this is what I got to do in order to be able to maintain and manage. Because if I don't do this, my butt's about to get thoroughly whooped. Yeah, that's what they had to go in order to get in. But a lot of them forgot who they were. I did a word on, what did I call that word? David, where I talked about the fact that David had to go through some things. And he got distracted. Much like Adam got distracted by the tree. Except his tree was like Sodom and Gomorrah. By going to the tree was like going to Sodom and Gomorrah. And got caught up over there. Coming back to the central point of this conversation. David is the male version of Cinderella. In his family, He was probably the one that seemingly did not belong in his family. He was probably the one that was the one that stuck out a little sore thumb because that's the one child. Whether it's the one child, like he was the child that was had before, and then everybody else was from the family unit, so he was the one that stuck out. Some of y'all was like that, even though he was the oldest. um, some of them, it's like he may have been the firstborn, but was disrespected, so on and so forth. Look at what happened to Cinderella. And with that being said, he was disrespected. I saw a good movie. It's called Sneakerella. It's about a young boy who was in the same situation, but it was Cinderella in reverse. It was a guy that was interested in a young woman. You're the young woman. He, wherever he is, remember, you are spiritually where he is physically, right? So, physically, you look a mess. But spiritually to them, they're the Cinderella looking like the David that is a mess still out there in the field. You see how that works? So, they were longing to find someone like you. Find who they belonged with. Find who matched them. Remember, the prince used to go out into... Oh, this is starting to make sense to me. The prince would go out, especially in the newer version with Brandy from 20 years ago. He would go out and he would look just to hang out with the regular people. Some of y'all are vice versa. The field that God called you into, you would go into that field to whatever capacity you knew to go to. Some of y'all are in fashion, so you would go to the local fashion shows. Some of y'all were in music. You would go to the local concerts. You would befriend the musician people. And they were drawn to you because of the light of God within you. So you knew how to go in and out of these places, just like the prince did. Follow me. Ooh, this is a word. And that's what you were. And David, and I'm almost being tempted to go and talk about Aladdin, because that's what Aladdin did as well. Jasmine was the princess, and he was the one that was the paupery person, didn't have no place to live, running around stealing stuff. But this is the way that this man was spiritually. This man was stealing hearts. This man was doing all this kind of stuff, but he was dry. He was in a desert. He was in a spiritual wilderness. He was out there fighting lions, tigers, and bears. And for the industries that some of y'all men was called to, let's just be real. They all lions, tigers, and bears up in there. But that was a training ground for him. And then, let's see. The ball happened. God gave them the opportunity. Because remember, in Cinderella, the movie, the parents, which for him it would be God, the father, and in one of the versions of Cinderella, I forget what version it was, the father was dying or sickly. And because he was sickly, he was trying to make sure that his son got married before the inheritance was going to be given. So that he would have to be married in order for that inheritance to come. The other one, with Brandy, it was just the fact that they were tired of seeing him single. And for God, it's like, dude, it's been forever. Could you please settle down? It's healthy for you to settle down. Could you settle down for a minute? Because You're getting there. So, with that being said, the Lord made an edict to go find you. The Lord was looking to and fro for someone that would stand in the gap for that man, and he chose you. You're the one sitting in the house, sitting in your little isolated space, and God tapped you, said, okay, I'll do it. Vice versa, they were spiritually in their wilderness, and God tapped them and said, that's your wife. And at first they didn't say they wanted to do it. It's kind of almost in that moment when David got anointed as king and they told him that he was going to get the daughter. What was it? The daughter for winning the battle. Oh, killing Goliath. Remember, that's the one that ended up disrespecting him. But, yeah. You were the one that was God's choice all along. Now, with that being said, you had to find him. And I'm not talking about go find him, go what have you, because remember, you are in the flipped position. Okay? You're not Cinderella in this. You're Abigail in David's story. Remember Abigail? A lot of people don't talk about Abigail. Abigail is the one that was married to Nabal, and she was the one that would make sacrifices, and David noticed her. You're Abigail. Okay? You're the one that made the sacrifice of praying for them. You're the one that made the sacrifice of giving of yourself, your time, your fasting, your caring, all that time. That's who you are. But they had to get to a point. I'm still drawing a parallel between Aladdin and David, because in all actuality, remember how Aladdin had to make himself, he had to go get the genie, and the genie had to make him look like a prince? To the world, they may have looked like a prince already. They may have looked amazing. But their spirit was still the lowly David out in the wilderness, just wanting to get by. Their spiritual life was out there in the desert some daggone where with lions, tigers, and bears. Though they looked like Aladdin in the full white chic suit and everything. Have you noticed there's a rhythm to these words lately? Anyway. And they needed to come into contact with you. Some of them wanted to come into contact with you in the best of their position. But what God has done, and this now makes sense, God had to bring them low to meet you where you are. They're going to come to you in the same phase that you are, but you're going to go up together. Physically, okay, is when the initiation or the initial, you may both be looking like, what the heck? But when you get to where God's taking you, that's your exaltation moment. You understand what I'm saying? Because he had to bring that man low enough to be able to meet you physically where you are. But spiritually, you're up there where God's going to take them back to. Now, I don't know whether the man has been fully restored from where he has been torn apart. That's between him and God. But only you will know when you come across this man. But remember that in Cinderella, the prince would do anything to get to have that time with her again. Spiritually, the relationship that God has created between you and this man, he knows he would do anything to come into contact with that physically again. Remember, she left her shoe. You, or shall I say, him, to you, God has left clues of this man to you, like the shoe was left of Cinderella's. And you had to track the clues to figure out how to get back to him. No matter what it looked like in the world to everybody else, the clues God was giving you. Come on now, God, and bring this together. Just like the Cinderella slipper was leading you to this man. Okay? And you spiritually had already found them. Now it was for them, in reality, where the story switches, to find you. Okay? Because the glass slipper for them is your prayer life, how you've prayed for them, so on and so forth. And they had to find you physically in order to give you the blessing that is anointed to be in your life. So you're going to come together in the culmination moment where spirit meets natural. You are the spiritual representation. He is the physical representation. When the two of you come together, it's like the moment which Cinderella is found, okay, in the back room somewhere, trying to do what she was doing. In one version, the cartoon version, they locked her in the attic. Think about it. Locked in a high place. You have been in a level of isolation in a high place that God has been using to protect you. Even if I were to look at the place that I'm in right now, I'm in a high building. Okay? And that's what God has been using to protect you. Your spouse has been in a high position in his physical life. Okay? And what the enemy tried to do was lock him in his high position, okay, to prevent him from being able to come down, just like Cinderella had to come down to come to where the prince was, downstairs in the house, where they were trying to do all of the interviews with them. Your spouse was trying to come down through all of the people trying to block and prevent and all this kind of stuff so that he could meet you where you're at. See how that worked? Now, the secondary version is she was just outside. In the Cinderella version with Brandy, she was outside and they blocked the doorway. Tiffany Montgomery has been doing a word talking about the gates to be open, the doors that they tried to keep shut and locked. They tried to keep the door shut between you and this spouse and tried to block the door. Remember how the stepmother and both sisters stood in front of the door? There are people that have tried to stand in front of the door to prevent your spouse from leaving the high place to come to where you are so that he could bless you. There are people where you are that have spiritually been trying to block the door to prevent you from coming out and being able to meet your spouse. See how that works? It works both ways. But remember, when the door was finally open, Epitha, be ye open, and Ephesians 2:14, the middle wall of partition between you and him are being removed. Spiritually, it's being removed. Physically, it's being removed. And in order to come to full circle with this word, the word Matthew, is it 6 or 7? Hold on one second. It says here, may your kingdom come soon and be done on earth.